Hello, everybody. My name is Vijay Sambamurthi, and welcome to yet another episode of the Uncluttered View with Vijay Sambamurthi. That's our podcast show where we invite guests who are leaders in their respective fields and invite them to talk about some of the interesting issues in the areas they are in. The reason it's called the Uncluttered View, of course, is that we encourage or exhort our guests to speak freely, without too many hedges, without too many ifs and buts. And we have always had a great time providing good content that's useful for all of you, especially when we have such a stellar cast of guests that we have. Today's guest is no different, and before I get into introducing him, I will also tell you one more thing that's very special and unique about this episode of Uncluttered View, and that is that for the first time, it is being shot in the Silicon Valley. So I'm right now in the US on a business trip, and I had, the pleasure of just reaching out to today's guest, who's a good friend and a industry leader here in the Valley, and he very graciously and kindly agreed to do this despite the short notice. So here we go with the first non-Indian, non-Singapore episode of the Uncluttered View. And it's very exciting for me personally because the Silicon Valley, as you all know, is one of the most buzzy and energy-filled places on the planet, both from a technological perspective and from a business perspective. And these days, AI has only made that on steroids. So therefore, it's only appropriate that the gentleman that I'm going to be talking to today is somebody who is in the thick of all the AI action in the Valley and around the world. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Vijay Krishnan, who is the co-founder and CTO of Turing. Now, I'll obviously let Vijay do an intro about him when I ask him the questions, but here's a brief intro about Vijay. He's my namesake. He has a very cool name, and that's something which I think. But apart from that, the even cooler thing is that this is his second startup, and he already has, in a few years of starting up, turned this into a unicorn. So they're already worth more than a couple of $1 billion, and they've raised funding from top-notch marquee investors, and they are solving for using AI to assist with talent management and talent-related issues. So I'll let Vijay talk about his startup in greater detail, but it gives me great pleasure to welcome Vijay Krishnan to the show again. So thank you, Vijay, for agreeing to so graciously make time for us on such short notice. As I mentioned to you, the reason I decided to invite Vijay is because he was in Singapore. I think was it a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, as a guest of TIE Singapore, where I'm a long-standing charter member. So he actually gave us a very good talk. So I thought that the viewers of the Uncluttered View could also benefit from his insights and his experiences, and that's why here we are. So Vijay, let's start by talking about your early days. I always like to ask my guests about their early days because everybody knows what they're doing now. So you grew up in Chennai, or Madras as it was called then, I suppose. And so did I. Mm-hmm. I grew up, but it was called Madras certainly when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s. So you were slightly probably later. You grew up maybe in the latter half of the 80s and maybe in the 90s. So as somebody who grew up in Chennai, so how did you get into engineering? I mean, you went to IIT Bombay. Mm-hmm. Now, was that a family pressure thing? Because I know coming from a Madras-based family full of engineers, how the pressure can be. Mm-hmm. So tell us what the situations were. Was it that you were very passionate to become an engineer? Was it that everybody in the family wanted you to be an IIT guy? Tell us that story.
Yeah, it was a bit of both. I mean, I grew up in a number of cities, including Chennai. I also spent many years in Bangalore as a child and a couple of years in Hyderabad also. As for engineering itself, I would say it was both. You're right. If I were made of a completely different disposition in terms of interests, etc., it might have been quite a misfit. Yeah, in my case, yes, there were definitely multiple IITians in my family and everything. And yes, there was definitely that expectation. Fortunately, that was very, very well aligned with my interests, my nature, and things like that also.
Okay. But was it very, therefore, putting a lot of pressure? You mentioned that there are a lot of IITians in the family.
Right.
That must have also put a lot of pressure that you have to be there. Was it there, or did you find yourself doing it because you genuinely loved it?
I mean, yeah, I loved it also. So it did not really feel like pressure. I guess it probably feels like pressure when it gets misaligned.
Understood.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fair. So now, so when you were growing up, so where did you go to school? Which school did you go to in Chennai?
As I mentioned, it was just a couple of my years at high school that was in
Only
Chennai.
the high school.
Yeah. In Chennai, I went to Don Bosco Egmore.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's a nice school.
Yeah.
So that's great. So then you were in IIT Bombay, and so after that, right after that, you went to Stanford.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like most people would, give an arm or a leg just to get into an IIT. Now you got into an IIT and then you went to Stanford. So tell me about what drove you to straight away go and study further, because many people grapple with that, should they get some experience after, IIT especially. So was that again something that you had predetermined, or did it just happen? How was that?
So I think during my undergraduate days, I happened to pick a research area that related to AI and machine learning. This was many, many years ago. This was back in 2003, long before even the deep learning revolution, leave alone the new LLM revolution. So having worked in that particular area, published papers in that specific area and so on, my goal at that point was to go to a good university, get my PhD, and then figure out what I wanted to do next.
Okay.
So at that point, at least I was quite clear. I wanted to go to grad school, build on this, do more work in AI, publish more and all that.
That is a lot of clarity, because most people, of course, say, I want to become an engineer. They say, I want to become a computer scientist. But how did you specifically hone into data sciences, which were, as you said, not even really understood, forget about understood, not even much heard of, let alone be understood. So how did you get into the fact that you wanted to dive deep into data sciences, number one? Number two, did you really have a sense of how big AI and data sciences would become? Or was it something of more of following your passion and heart, and it kind of clicked eventually that it became big? So which of the two was it?
Yeah, it was much more following my passion. I mean, I did have some eye toward practical utility. For example, I did not attempt to go purely into theoretical computer science and graph theory and things of that sort, where more or less your only option, if you wish to continue in that area, is to become a professor at some university. But so I didn't really go veer toward that kind of extreme. I did know that there were practical applications, but within the arena of where practical applications existed, this is what excited me the most by far.
Okay.
That was definitely the largest driver. Additionally, it also helped that I happened to work with some really world-renowned research advisors. Like at IIT Bombay, my research advisor was Shauman Chakrabarti, and this who is quite a world famous name in this specific area, and that gave me a very, very nice early start also. I think without that kind of exposure, I might not have possibly started in this area that early.
And what about in Stanford? So you walk us through some of the highlights of what you did at Stanford and learned at Stanford, which kind of stood out and helped you in the future when you started up even your first one and the second one.
When I joined Stanford, my goals were a lot more about getting a PhD, remaining in the research area for longer and so on. So I did do some work with a couple of professors in computer science, Chris Manning and Andrew Ng, one professor in medical informatics. Atul Butte, who was quite a pioneer in the use of data for precision medicine, who unfortunately passed away a couple months ago. I had done some work with all of them, written papers and so on. But sometime after my first year, I think the startup bug started to bite me more and more. Like earlier, before coming to Stanford.
I guess it happens at Stanford, right? The startup bug bites a lot of people when they're at Stanford.
Right.
That's what a quality university does.
Yeah. Since the point is, now of course the situation is rather different. At the IITs, there's so many unicorns founded by my juniors in India and so on. That was not quite the case back then. So at that point, at least, okay, doing a startup seemed like a theoretically an interesting idea, but it seemed like there were too many holes. Even I didn't know how to go about it, any of that stuff. At Stanford, increasingly, right, like given our social groups, a lot of things around the ecosystem, it seemed a lot within reach. I remember we took this class on entrepreneurship during grad school, which while obviously it couldn't have possibly taught us everything about, becoming a good founder, but it absolutely taught us how not to make rookie mistakes, which I do see, many founders even struggle with for many years. Okay. It taught us how to stop, not make rookie mistakes in 2 or 3 months, which was itself helpful. And of course, after that, we were kind of on our own.
What sort of rookie mistakes did it teach you to avoid?
Lot of things. Like, for example, firstly, it taught us to put a lot of emphasis on the market. Make sure you're solving a real problem. Put the customer first. Not be so obsessed with just your technology. Think in terms of, what is a pathway to revenue. A lot of things like this. That and even how does venture capital work? All that.
They taught you all that.
Yeah.
And obviously, because you have many entrepreneurs also speaking about it, as opposed to just professors, right? So that gives the practical side of entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah. And at Stanford, a lot of professors have played on the other side of the fence also. A number of computer science professors have taken a number of companies IPO. Sure. There's all sorts of things. Yes. One of the professors, the late Professor Hector Garcia, who advised us in our prior startup, he was also the advisor to Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Google. So there was all of this, which was... which would have been, this sort of exposure would have just been difficult to get any place else. One of the founders of YouTube, Javed Karim, was our classmate. The founders of Instagram were our juniors, and so on. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I can imagine how motivating it must be when you are surrounded by such company.
Right.
And it's a nice kind of pressure that it motivates you to do great stuff.
Right.
What were you trying to solve with Rover?
We started off with personalized search. We went on to then move to personalized content recommendations.
Why did you pick, talent management related use case?
The objections people brought up were quite solvable. How do you source that talent? How do you vet that talent? How do you deal with the time zone issues?